Security and Data Privacy. So if you choose to do this program, which I hope many of you do, you will have Brian as a professor in this program. So I think you'll find that you'll be very lucky with that. Brian, I'd like to just toss it over to you quickly to just give a little bit more of an introduction of yourself and welcome our attendees.
Sure, thanks, Julie, and welcome everybody. And just want to echo what Julie said. We're really pleased to have you on today's webinar. We've got a special guest, a real leader in this field, and one of the pioneers of the combination of law and cybersecurity, Tim Opsitnick. Tim has been a part of our program from its inception. He sits on the board of our Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection, and we have plans to get him involved as a faculty member as well in one of the upper level courses. And so we're just really pleased to have him today and his expertise. And Julie, I'll go ahead and give a quick introduction of Tim, and then we can move into the discussion. So as I mentioned, Tim is a leader in the field of cybersecurity and legal studies. He started out as an expert in electronic discovery, was a lawyer at the international law firm Jones Day, and then founded his own business, JURINNOV, which originally started as an electronic discovery firm, which gave him deep expertise in how data works. And then he gradually, that business evolved to become as much a cybersecurity and forensics firm as electronic discovery. And then eventually he sold it to the national firm, TCDI. And really, they purchased that firm because of its cybersecurity expertise and the unique mix that Tim brought to the table in having expertise in law and cybersecurity. Julie, if you move to the next slide, then we'll get started on the discussion, and I'll give Tim a chance to tell us a little bit more about himself in that discussion. So, real briefly, what we plan to do today is have a nice informal conversation with Tim to talk about the intersection of law and cybersecurity. Then we'll open it up for questions from the audience, and then I'll turn it back to Julie to give just a really quick overview of our program for those of you who are interested, and we'll of course be happy to follow up with you if you have any questions about the program itself. You can contact either Julie or myself. All right, next slide, please, Julie. So Tim, now that I've given that brief overview of your biography, I'd like you to just start by giving us a little more detail and a little flavor of how it came to be that you as a corporate lawyer got interested in this field, data in general through the discovery pathway, but really focusing on how you became interested in pivoting your firm to work in cybersecurity and the relationship between cybersecurity and law.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. I'm always happy to help. I think this is a great idea, and you know, look, my professional career as a lawyer started in the mid '80s, and you know, the personal computers were invented in the early '80s, about '82, and so I started at Jones Day and was a practicing litigator, and for whatever reason I was drawn to some areas of technology for our clients doing litigation management using computers and collecting information. And so I started a company in 2000, which was originally directed towards building case management systems and later e-discovery. But how I got involved in cybersecurity was, you know, we started with using computer forensics right around 2000, 2001. And, you know, and one of the big elements of computer forensics is investigating incidents. And so we would get calls from companies that would say, hey, something happened, somebody took this or stole this, or, you know, something occurred. And so we would do these computer forensics investigations. And as I would be leaving, they'd say, hey, how do we keep this from happening? And again, and I would say, well, I don't really know. That's not my area. But it only took a few times when I realized, hey, wait a second, there's this whole nother area out there, which is making companies more secure from a cybersecurity and data privacy aspect. So, you know, it took a few times for it to sink in, but eventually I realized that there was at least as much, if not more, of a market in helping companies either respond to incidents, which as we first got involved, but later make themselves much more defensible in a reasonable way from a cybersecurity and data privacy perspective. So that's really how the transition occurred. And, you know, that transition takes place probably around, you know, 2003, 2004 for me, and then really accelerates. And, you know, I like to think of things as proactive and reactive. And, you know, the reactive is more the investigative side, and the proactive is more, hey, what do you do from keeping this from happening again, and, you know, and building a secure company.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And obviously you're as much an entrepreneur as you are either a lawyer or a cybersecurity expert. But from your perspective, and thinking back to when you made that pivot as well as what you're doing now, what is the relationship between having a legal background and understanding the law and working as a professional in cybersecurity and data privacy, even if you're not a lawyer per se?
Well, the legal and the technical are hopelessly intertwined. You know, the technical was sort of first, you know, people doing the, you know, the proactive, but the legal aspect of it is just so overwhelmingly intertwined today, both because of the, you know, the nature of the patchwork quilt of laws and regulations that you're identifying here on your page here, which, you know, are split up in both somewhat of an industry type approach, such as PCI, which are standards for credit cards, and Gramm-Leach-Bliley, which are financial, and GDPR, which is more privacy and more international created. And then, of course, we've got, I guess, the 50th state now created breach notification laws. So we've got 50 different state versions of breach notification laws. And if you're a company that has a data breach, and you're an e-commerce company and you're doing business in 35 different states, you might have 35 different requirements, both in terms of what you do and how soon you do it, for breach notification. So we've got this patchwork quilt that applies to regulations, that applies to jurisdictions, both state and federal and international as well, with GDPR and the new influx, which I foresee is if there isn't a federal law that takes place on privacy regulations, we're going to begin to have the same patchwork quilt as we have on cybersecurity among the states. We're going to be able to we're going to start having that on in the states as well. So it's just the legal is such an intertwined aspect of everything we do, dictating both what the standards are, what the requirements are, and what you do in this situation and what you do in that situation, and the policy requirements that it's as I said, they're hopelessly intertwined.
Yeah, and
or
of course,
hopefully.
and of course, as you mentioned, that patchwork is also changing. I just saw an article this morning that the CCPA 2.0 is now on the ballot. So even though California's law is brand new, it looks like it might be changing in the near future as well. Julie, could you move to the next slide? And I want to probe a little more deeply into that relationship between law and cybersecurity through the lens of the work you're doing at TCDI. And so I pulled this, and this is me. Tim wouldn't have let me give such a shameless plug, but I thought this was a nice slide for us to illustrate TCDI. Tell us a little bit about your work at TCDI, both as a cybersecurity vendor who comes in to help organizations, as well as I know you're the general counsel, and so you're internally thinking about these things for TCDI.
Yeah, so let me take the internal first. From the internal perspective, you know, TCDI, we the largest part of our business remains our case management part of our business, basically collecting and organizing materials and information for large companies to respond to litigation. And so, as you can guess, that information is highly confidential. And as a result, we pride ourselves in having great security. And so one of the thoughts by Bill Johnson, our CEO, when he wanted to adopt and involve a cybersecurity company was that, look, one way of saying that we think cybersecurity is very important in this area is to engage a consulting practice as part of our company that, so that we can show, hey, this is very important to us and we take this seriously. So we do pride ourselves in internally having a culture of security and making security very, very important. When you talk about security from a security framework, you look at companies that do things ad hoc all the way to leading, and we do pride ourselves in being leading, and so that's one of the reasons why, from an internal perspective, having a consulting company was so important to us, and I think the same is true of a lot of other companies, and that's what we're in a state where we're emerging, where companies are saying, from a competitive standpoint, I too would like to let everybody know I'm secure. And one way of doing that is to involve more and more people who know best practices and get them integrated. And so we'll make decisions about what should our contracts say, what should our websites say, how much training should we do, how much is too much or how much is too little. Those sort of proportional questions are very difficult internally. But we also help companies on the outside. And so let me talk about from the outside perspective.
And actually, Tim, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we got a question from one of our participants, Daniel. And so I just want to let him quickly ask his question, and then let's turn to the external perspective. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask that in the midst of all the cyber attacks going on, what does the program seek to equip trainees, or let's say students, in order to be able to combat the increase of cyber attacks from all across the globe once somebody goes through the training?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, Daniel. And if you don't mind, we'll hold that for the end when we're going to turn to the program itself, and then and we'll definitely get to that. But just briefly stated, our program, while it sits in the law school, integrates both the technical and legal, and then also the business strategic dimensions. And so we give you a thorough but basic grounding on the technical side, and then we quickly move into the legal and policy and business dimensions. But we'll go over that a little more detail towards the end here. Thank you for the question, though. So Tim, you had just given us a nice overview of your internal role within TCDI, and I just wanted to underscore the fact that that's true for almost any company. Now, TCDI, as a service provider to law firms, is particularly concerned about confidentiality and security, although for the most part, outside of specific engagements, it's not generally regulated, right? You're talking about the need for security primarily as a business proposition and as a necessity if you're going to be a trusted vendor to law firms, not because it's driven by a particular regulation. And that's true really for any business, but especially service businesses. And it's part of the reason why this field is getting so big, because everyone needs to protect their information, even if they're not covered by a specific regulation.
Yeah, and that's exactly right, Brian. And that's why I say I often tell clients, look, cybersecurity and data privacy, putting the controls and all the things in place, it's a little like marketing. Everybody needs some of it. Some people need more than others. It's sort of a proportional view, but everybody needs these sorts of things, and so they are exploding, as Daniel mentioned in the prior question. You know, as I often refer to it as cybersecurity disorder, it is growing by leaps and bounds. And just in the last 3 or 4 months, the people who you know are taking advantage of others, it has exploded. They've taken the fact that people are more vulnerable as a result of the pandemic and the civil unrest, and they've even challenged corporations and companies even more. So the demand for people who, you know, understand both the technical and the legal aspects of cybersecurity and data privacy it truly is exploding. And I think I was going to talk a little bit on the external side, and what I view on the external side is important. And look, we've got the reactive side, the incident response, and look, you've got a number of people who participate in investigating an incident response. You've got this team, this if you're doing it right, you have an incident response plan, and you've got your team. And that team is going to be comprised of both people who are familiar with all sorts of things, some technical, some legal, some in relation to, how to deal with consumers and how to deal with public relations and all sorts of things. So you want a well-rounded team, just like I think when we're making cybersecurity professionals, we want well-rounded cybersecurity professionals, people who understand the technical, understand the legal, and sort of the compliance, which is a hybrid or a crossover of both of those things. And then, of course, we have the proactive side of what we do, and the first are doing assessments. And assessments are important because you take a look at an organization and you're basically asking them the question, what should I stop doing and what should I start doing? And you're giving them advice with respect to that. And after assessments, you're doing things like vulnerability scanning and pen testing. And so you're checking out the things they put in place that they thought were going to protect them. Are they actually protecting them? Do they work the way they thought they would work when they put them into place? And so the pen testers are the people trying to break in. They're the ethical hackers. And then lastly, you've got the real-time monitoring, the endpoint protection at some level, and also intrusion detection and event monitoring, those sorts of things to say, hey, what is really happening as we sit here today? Are we okay? And those are the sorts of things that require both a technical and a legal approach.
And just to drill down a little bit on that example, as someone coming from the technical side, and as I mentioned before, while this program gives you a thorough grounding through Cybersecurity 1 and 2 in the technical side, even if you don't have a technical background, because we feel that's necessary for any professional in this field, whether you're sitting in a compliance role, legal role, business, or technical role. It's not primarily designed to do a deep dive on the technical side. Instead, we pivot quickly to integrating that technical grounding into that larger strategic legal business perspective. And so if you're a technical person, you're on the cybersecurity team, either internally or you're working for a company like yours doing incident response, where does that legal knowledge come into play? Obviously, it's not specifically there when you're configuring the firewall or when you're trying to unpack what exactly happened in the incident, but where do you bring it into play?
Well, you bring it into play on your understanding of what are your requirements and what's reasonable. So let's say there are 400 or so odd security controls out there. Whether it's 350 to 450, but there's all these different security controls, and each of the different frameworks seems to focus on one, or the regulations focus on some versus others. It's knowing when one is important and when one isn't necessarily as important. You know, in some cases, you're obligated to do something because the requirements that apply to you say that you have to, and so you're doing what it takes to comply with that. But just because you comply with the requirements doesn't necessarily make you secure. You know, being secure requires that you have a much broader understanding of what the capabilities are and what things can be done from both a legal and a technical perspective. And so, you know, having a broad understanding allows you to, you know, carve out a more proportional approach, because every case is different. Every company, every organization is different. And helping someone to reach what's right for them requires both a legal and a technical understanding.
Yeah, and so I would imagine, especially as you move up the ranks in seniority, being able to talk to not only legal counsel, but to the CEO, the CISO, or if you are the CISO, to the CEO and the board, it's important to be able to talk to them, not just about what you're doing on the technical side, but how that's adding value to the company in terms of reducing its risk, both from a business and legal perspective.
Yeah, I think that is perfect. You know, I often find myself with both a legal understanding and a technical understanding as being the translator between the groups. It's being able to forge the bridge so that the legal teams and the more technical teams, or the compliance-oriented teams, can talk together or talk in the same language. So I think that having both a legal and technical understanding does help form that bridge.
Yeah, so Julie, could you go to the next slide? And before we turn to Q&A, I told Tim I wanted to bring into play this very recent event with the Twitter hack, because it, I think, nicely illustrates some of the things we've been discussing. And just to set the stage, Twitter, and I don't have the date in front of me, but at least 10 years ago, or close to 10 years ago, had been subject to an investigation by the Federal Trade Commission, which is one of several regulators in the United States, since we don't have a single federal law that is deeply involved in these issues, and with a particular focus on consumer information. And so therefore the primary regulator for social media companies in most instances. And Twitter had been promising certain things in their privacy policy and implying certain things about their security that they actually weren't living up to. And so the Federal Trade Commission essentially sued them in a regulatory action, and then entered a settlement where they agreed for a span of 20 years, which is standard for the FTC, to do certain things to ensure that they were living up to their promises to consumers, and that they were more generally, as you mentioned the term, Tim, doing things that would provide reasonable security. Now, they've had several breaches since then, but this was arguably the biggest. And so, Tim, from your perspective as an outsider, obviously you're not a vendor to Twitter, but what are the legal issues that sort of pop into your brain if you were to be called in to try to help Twitter sort out what happened here?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the first one that jumps in my mind, and that is that the technical issues are often so complex as to what happened, how it happened, and because there are no black and white rules on right and wrong, when the regulators and others, or the litigators, look at you, you're often not judged by what happened and how the hacking occurred, but you're often judged, in fact, by what you did in response to the hacking. and that is, did you deal with this in a forthright manner? Did you notify affected individuals? Did you come clean, for the lack of a better way? And did you inform your consumers or your audience? And that is both a legal and a technical argument. And Twitter did a great job of that. I look at their updates that they were giving on their blogs, and and how they were very apologetic. And actually, in terms of sheer numbers, there weren't many people affected by this, but they just happened to all be VIPs. Twitter took what I would characterize as a really good approach to this. They looked at it and they said, hey, we know we need to be looked upon as a leader. And so we need to be apologetic, and we need to start notifying people what happened. And they did right away. And there are times in their message to people, they said, hey, we're not going to tell you what we're doing to remediate, because we need to keep that secret, because we need to make sure we're locking the bad guys out. And I think people understand that, and they're willing to be forgiving in that regard. So, having the understanding of how you can be affected from the FTC or litigation, is essential to directing you on a forthright approach with your audience.
Yeah, and one of the things that that's still, so I agree with you. I think Twitter did an excellent job messaging, getting in front of this, proactively shutting down access to try to get a handle on it, so there weren't other incidents. What'll be interesting to me is whether and how the FTC feels that this may have been a violation of the agreement. Because one of the things they required, which they almost always require, is that there was an external review and certification of their security program. So either that review missed something, which is perfectly possible, because as we all know, security is a moving target, and they may have had excellent security, and this was just something that reasonably they missed. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out from the FTC's perspective, particularly given the sensitivities around Twitter's role in the upcoming election. And I just want to mention, I just want to quickly mention to the participants, we have upcoming the Center for Cybersecurity and Privacy Protection's annual conference, which was rescheduled from the spring to the fall, September 17th and 18th. We're going to be doing it virtually. And for folks who are applicants, who start an application in our process, or students, you'll get a discount code, and for students, you'll actually get free access to all of the conference content live, which will include a keynote address by one of the Federal Trade Commissioners, Christine Wilson, as well as we have as one of our speakers, Tim himself, and then Tim's good friend, David Shonka, who was several times acting counsel for the FTC. So we'll have lots of, I'm sure we'll talk about the Twitter hack a little bit more. But Tim, unless you had something else to add, I want to give it back, or actually open the floor for any questions for you, and then I'll give it back to Julie to quickly give a preview of the program.
Sure, go right. Yeah, that's great. I'd love to have questions.
Okay, so we had given, there's a hand up, and let me find it. Julie, can you see who the hand is? Oh, I think is it Daniel again?
Yes.
Go ahead, Daniel.
Okay, so quick one. I just have 2 questions. I'll put them all together, and then whilst I'll wait and listen to the entire program. The first question will be, I know regulators like, Congress, Senate is always doing a catch-up as far as the ICT platform or sector is concerned, because sometimes somebody has to come up with an app or with a technology before they do the catch-up by making a law to be able to regulate that. And we've seen the ongoing fight between Congress and the Senate with Facebook and other technology companies. My question is, when you take this course, it allows you to play a certain role at the corporate world, but it doesn't bridge the gap that satisfies you to become like a lawyer, just like we have some lawyers who become constitutional, they specialize in constitution, they specialize in criminal law and stuff like that. Is there a way you guys are looking at it in the future where there will be a bridge of that gap? And then the second question will be, is there any other option for financing apart from those of us, probably we're not looking entirely at FIPSA, we're not looking at financial aid. Is there any other option? Because some of us, I've been following this for months now, but just probably I'm looking at the finance option. Is there any other way you guys have that option?
So thanks for those questions, Daniel. On the first one, this program is actually designed specifically to at least straddle the gap between the technical and the legal side. And so it gives, I mean, in terms of the legislatures, Congress and the states, you're absolutely correct. The nature of the legislation process is such that there's always some gaps between, first of all, gaps in knowledge, and then crafting laws that can address something that moves as quickly as technology is always a challenge. And that's why we end up with sort of open-ended terms like reasonable security. And, you know, we see different iterations on that. But that's the kind of thing that we talk about extensively in this program, and give you a thorough grounding to be able to understand new laws as they come out and to try to figure out in the context of applying actual security controls, what would it mean to be, say, reasonable security, and how do I assess that from a technical perspective when I'm talking to, say, counsel, or for that matter, when I'm defending my program to a regulator like the FTC. On the finance side, be happy, Julie and I would be happy to talk separately, but unfortunately at this point, the program does not have a scholarship budget available directly. We hope to be able to develop that in the future as we grow.
Yeah, Daniel, just to jump in, I will send you an email after this webinar and you and I can talk privately about some funding options.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I did see one that was sent in the chat box about will this webinar be recorded? And yes, I am recording this webinar and I will send it out to everybody after we complete.
Okay, so feel free to send questions if they occur to you as we wrap up with a quick summary of the program. But Julie, let's go ahead to the next slide. And actually, Julie, I'll let you take this one.
Great. So yeah, I just want to briefly talk about the structure of the program. I did chat into the chat box a link to our curriculum. There won't be a slide on the detailed curriculum, but Brian might want to talk about a couple of the courses that we offer after I go over the program details. So this is the Master of Legal Studies in Cybersecurity and Data Privacy is a part-time, it's designed as a part-time program. It's fully online, and you have the opportunity to either start in the fall semester, the spring semester, or the summer semester. Our next term is the fall semester, which starts on September 9th. The program is a total of 30 credit hours. You can complete this within 2 years if you take this on a part-time basis. I do want to mention on special cases, Brian and I will work with you. We do have some people who take this at more of an accelerated rate. So you are able to take more than the 2 courses per semester, which is a part-time basis. So we can talk about that and really figure out a personalized, individualized curriculum for you if you would like to take more than 2 courses per semester. But if you do take this on a part-time basis, like I said, you take 2 courses per semester for a total of 10 courses, which spread over 5 semesters. Brian, did you want to mention, maybe answer part of Daniel's original question, just talk about some of the courses, not all of them, that they will have access to in this program?
Absolutely. And so to give you the background on the program, this is a program that we originally developed and continue to teach to our Juris Doctor students. so the students that are pursuing the law degree, as well as share courses with graduate students in the business school's Masters of Science and Information Sciences program. And we decided within the Master of Legal Studies program, because we had tremendous interest, to take that set of courses that we offer, or the core of it, and then wrap into it the 2 courses that we already teach in our general MLS program, Introduction to American Law, Legal Writing, Research, and Advocacy. But we wanted to give those courses a very specific focus and grounding in cybersecurity and privacy law. And so what we have is our first complete degree that's focused deliberately and specifically on cybersecurity and privacy throughout. And the Introduction to American Law and Legal Writing and Research courses, which you take the first in semester 1 and the second semester 2, give you that thorough grounding in law, as both law generally as well as cybersecurity and privacy, for folks who do not have a legal background. And then concurrently in semester 1, you take Cybersecurity 1, and then semester 2, Cybersecurity 2. And those are the same courses that we currently teach in our Juris Doctor program, which give that thorough grounding in the technical side of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity 1 is a general overview, gives you a chance to look at some labs, and then Cybersecurity 2 goes back through that same content in the context of a project, team project, to apply it in the context of health law to create a set of security controls that Tim had mentioned earlier for an entity that has to comply with the major health rules. And so in combination, those first 2 semesters give you a really solid grounding on both sides. And then in the upper level, we have a mix of courses. These are the courses that we're currently planning to build out for the program, but we have a range of other courses as well, upper level courses that deal with in-depth and specific areas, either from a legal or security privacy perspective, that we're going to add to the program and give you a total of 10. And these give you a chance to go deeper into those specific areas. And as I mentioned before, we have several other courses in the program that we either will add later and allow for electives, or that we may add depending on how the build out plays out in terms of availability of our professors and what we think might work best in the sequence. And so, for example, we've got a course that focuses more on the national security and defense side of things that we intend to add at some point, as well as some other courses that go into more advanced topics in privacy. And so this is the sequence. And other than Introduction to American Law and Legal Writing, all of these courses are courses that are taught the same content to lawyers in the field. And so I know we've had some interest by people who have their Juris Doctor degree. And I want to emphasize that we also are able to work with you to potentially waive either Introduction to American Law or Legal Writing, and then allow you to take some of those other courses that I mentioned that we're planning to bring online. So if you're interested, but you think you might not need one or another of the basic courses, just feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy again to work with you to make sure that the content fits your needs.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I was able to put this curriculum in, so I'm glad you guys are able to visualize this. And I did want to mention that since this is an all online program, it is great for individuals who do work full time because most of the courses are built with an asynchronous component, meaning you'll log on, look at the lectures, view the lectures, read the assignments at your own time. But we also do have some synchronous components where there'll be some live courses so you can interact with your professors and other classmates. So it's very flexible, and like Brian mentioned, we are willing to work with you to make sure that the curriculum fits your needs exactly. Let me see, I see we have a question in the chat. So it says, please, a little more clarification on career prospects for graduates. Brian, do you want to take this question?
Sure. So one of the things that we emphasize to prospective students is this content is going to give you a very thorough grounding and some expertise in the legal and business strategic sides as well as that thorough grounding, the technical side. We are not, however, a direct pathway to say an entry-level technical job. Instead, this is really a degree that's going to have value over the life of your career. As Tim and I discussed, it gives you that ability to translate across multiple fields and really to succeed and have depth as a professional, whether you're on the compliance legal side, whether you're in a business role, or whether you're part of the technical team. That said, that makes it a little bit more complicated in terms of the specific career prospects. The degree has tremendous value. We developed it by talking with CISOs and leaders in major corporations like Eaton Corporation, Goodyear, Progressive, and others. And so we know it has value to them, but it is a degree that you need to be able to talk with either the people who are at the institution you're at now or others who are in roles that you're interested in taking on to make sure that that you can explain it to them. And most people who are in the field understand it right away. And we've had tremendous interest from a lot of experienced professionals. But unlike, say, a SANS certificate or a CompTIA certificate, it's not going to give you that direct line to an entry-level job. But it has value across the spectrum, which is part of the reason we brought Tim on to talk about how different roles really can benefit from this global perspective.
Great, thank you. Oh, I see another question. I don't see the other question, so if it pops up, I will be sure to ask it, but I do want to say just briefly that here's a slide about the next steps. So if you are interested in applying or receiving more information, I truly encourage you to reach out to myself or Brian. The application deadline to start this upcoming semester, which is in the fall semester, which is September 8th, the application deadline is August 10th. I have included on this slide what is required for admission. It's a very simple application, and you can find out more if you visit csulawonline.com. But just to go over this briefly, we need a current resume, a personal statement describing how you expect to use this degree or your motivation to pursue this degree, and your official undergraduate transcripts. Again, I strongly encourage you to contact me or Brian, and we'd be happy to go over this more in depth with you and sit down with you and speak with you and make sure that this program is the right fit for you. And here's my contact information. I can see that I've spoken to some of you or at least emailed back and forth. So if we haven't had the pleasure to do that yet, I really look forward to speaking with you. I encourage you to reach out to me at any time. Are there any other questions that you have for Tim or for Brian before we sign off for today? Or Brian or Tim, is there anything else you'd like to mention to our attendees?
I just want to thank Tim for giving us his time and sharing his expertise. He's a very, very busy guy, and we really appreciate it. And also thank him generally for all the support he's given to the program. And thank our attendees for listening, and we'll, again, be happy to answer any questions you have either via email or through a phone call. Thanks, everybody.
Excellent. Yes, I'd like to thank Tim and Brian for the discussion today. I know I certainly learned a lot, and I think this topic is very interesting and exciting. So we encourage you to reach out to us. Tim, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing everybody either in this program or maybe at our next conference. But thank you, and have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.